Nice. Very nice. Well, that's going to wrap up topic 2. So let's move on to topic 3. Corey, what is your topic today?
All right, so I have a couple that I was bouncing between, but I'm gonna say something very specific, and I'll give you my answer to kind of give you time to come up with yours.
Okay.
Which is, what is a personally underrated franchise for you? Now, the weird part of this question is not what's an underrated franchise, because my answer is The Legend of Zelda, which is by all means not underrated at all.
Mm-hmm.
But for me personally, for years I have underrated it in the Corey pantheon, where the example is I've played Pokemon my entire life from childhood. And then the more you think about it, you're like, well, the GameCube was my first, like, this is your console, Corey. This isn't Colby's. This isn't half Colby's, whatever. We shared the PS2. Colby got the Xbox and I got the GameCube. And they were like, this is your console. So I played Wind Waker. Dumb child Corey probably never beat Wind Waker, but I played the hell out of Wind Waker. I got a Wii, and of course I got Twilight Princess because I got a Wii when it first came out, and it felt like everybody got Twilight Princess when it first came out. I got a Wii U so I could play Wind Waker HD on it. And then the Switch I got the day that it released, of course, with Breath of the Wild. And then I went back and played Ocarina of Time on the DS, and I was like, wait, I love this. And then the more I thought about it, I was like, wait a second. The Legend of Zelda is an integral franchise to my entire life, and I've never given it the due respect that it has in my life. And so I've gone back, and I don't like Majora's Mask. I still haven't beat Majora's Mask. I know Majora's Mask has the fan base out there. But Link Between Worlds is like my favorite, which is a weird take. I couldn't get through the Sky. Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention. I of course bought Skyward Sword because everybody bought Skyward Sword, and a 10 out of 10, which is my favorite example in my entire gaming career of how weird an entire industry has course corrected. Where the game launches and everybody was like, "This game is perfect, 10 out of 10, amazing," and then within like a year, people turned on it, and then nowadays people are like, yeah, it's not bad, but it's like an 8, it's like a 9. But it's like even the people, like even IGN, like obviously totally different reviewer from then to now, but like everybody's like, yeah, it didn't actually deserve the 10. I don't know what we were thinking. Like it's so weird. But so it's a very weird specific question because it's not like, oh, I think, this indie game is, or this indie movie series. It could be anything, books, movies, games, whatever. It's not like I think this is underrated. It's very specifically, what have you been underrating that maybe has, played this huge part in your life like Zelda has to me? And now I'm like all in on now I feel like I'm a fanboy for Zelda. I played oh my God, I can't think of the one on Switch that
Link to the
everybody
Past.
no, the one on Switch that the Koei Tecmo made. Hyrule
Cadence?
Warriors: Age of
Oh,
Calamity.
okay, gotcha.
Cadence of Hyrule, I actually didn't play, and this is weird because I can normally do beat-driven games. For the life of me, I can't do Cadence of Hyrule. It's so weird. I die all the time. I'm like, oh my God, I can't figure this out. But Age of Calamity got panned because of its performance issues, and people were like, oh, this game performs at 30 on a good day, but most of the time it's performing at like 15, 20, which is not false. But like I loved it, and I love the iteration of the Breath of the Wild characters. Like I think that's a fantastic like portrayal. And then if you play I just said the name, Age of Calamity. If you play Age of Calamity, it kind of, in my opinion, fixes the biggest complaint that most people have about Breath of the Wild, which is the lack of story. And Age of Calamity, while not being technically canonical, because spoiler alert, you prevent Breath of the Wild at the end, if I recall correctly, or it goes a different way. It's been a while since I've played it. Apparently, or the way I understood it, everything leading up to the inciting incident of Ganon coming out plays out the same in the timeline. I could be making that up in my head, but so at the very least, you can make your own headcanon and your own fantasy booking tying it back to wrestling. You can fantasy book your own, like, oh, this is how Breath of the Wild happened, and hopefully in Tears of the Kingdom. Sorry, I'm rambling, but
No, you're fine.
So Legend of Zelda is my answer. What's yours, if you have one?
So, this is something I personally have maybe not recognized, I guess you're saying, right? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So one popped in my head as you were explaining of like, oh, that's a really topical one. I'm trying to think of something else that maybe I have the history with. So we'll keep that over here for now.
Okay.
The one that I played and didn't connect with, but now recently have been like really immersed in and like wanting more of it is The Last of Us. Now, I was late to The Last of Us. I got a PS3, but it was mainly like my PlayStation 2 HD collection machine.
Nice. Okay.
And so I played it on the PlayStation 4. And at that time, obviously with kind of funny circles, everybody, Last of Us, Last of Us, Last of Us. It was like God's gift, coming down. And I was like, okay. So years ago, I played it and I streamed it. And when I got to the end, I was like, yeah, that was fine. It was okay. It was good. And it could have been just, all those messages of like how amazing it was, blah, 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 and like hearing that over and over again. So when I finally got to that point, it was just like, So
it's a game.
Yeah, it does. So it was fine, but it was something I was always like, I don't get it. Like I'm glad people like it, all that.
Yeah.
So Last of Us 2 came out, and it was one of those things where I wasn't sure if I was going to play it. But once again, happy for everybody because everybody was stoked that it was coming out. And then we get the announcement of the remake of Part 1. And I'm like, another thing. I wasn't as hard on it as some of the internet was of like, oh, this is blasphemous. Why are they making it? But I was like, I don't, no excitement for it. And then the show comes out, or at least they announce it. And I'm like, I'll check it out. It seems cool. And then I watched it, Corey. And just like everybody else who's watching it, Corey, I'm like, what is going on? And I don't know if it was just how my brain worked, how I pushed everything away. I don't remember jack shit about the story except for the ending. So everything's fresh. I'm watching episode to episode. I'm like, I don't know what happens. I don't know who's this character. Why are we getting this? I don't know. And it's awesome.
It's such a good way to experience it.
Yeah,
and it's amazing.
So I'm excited week to week for more episodes to come out, as most people are. And I've already made the decision that once the show is over, at least with first season, I'm gonna play the game again and try and dive back into it and play 2 for the first time. So like, this is something that for years I was just like, no connection, and now all of a sudden I'm like, give me more.
It just hit.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
So I'm not sure. Yeah, it's just, I guess, the different medium and how they're telling the story, and obviously the actors and the work, the Neil behind it. Just like, woo. Just
sometimes that's what it takes. Yeah, different medium can tell you.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that you know the thing of Part 2, correct?
I have been very fortunate, and I don't know.
Heck yes.
So,
dude, I am so excited. That's amazing. It's like Final Fantasy VII levels of like, if you don't know what happens, like Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 like is gonna hit, and it's like that same like level of stuff where it's like if you haven't been like, just keep your eyes shut to everything.
Okay.
I can't wait to hear your impressions on it. Because I absolutely love it. I can't give it enough praise because Last of Us Part 2, I will say this, and nobody argues with me, to be completely honest. People say it's a bold claim, but I've never heard anybody give me something else. Last of Us 2 is the best playing game I've ever played.
Okay.
Like the way that it feels, like the gameplay, it's like something that they added that I'm sure it's not the only game. I know it's not the only game to ever do this. But they do the thing where you can dive in any direction. And so like somebody does whatever, you can dive backward. And when you dive backward, your gun's already up. So you dive backward, pow, and you never feel like such a badass until like somebody comes at you, you dive backwards and shoot them. And you're like, I am amazing. And you're like, this is so cool. That's why I can't wait for Factions to come out. That's so exciting to hear. That's amazing. I'm the opposite end of the spectrum, that I am like the people that from day one have been like, Last of Us is amazing. And then looking back, like you said with your first impressions, I love the story, but I've also been like tainted throughout years of being a huge Naughty Dog fan. Looking back, it's like I don't know what it does. I want to play it again. I reinstalled both remastered and part 1, and it's very funny because I tweeted that last night, and I got 2 comments, and I got 2 people hit me up and was like, "Well, why are you installing remastered? You're doing it for factions, I guess." And I'm like, "Well, yes and no. Like, have you seen the comparisons with like remastered and part 1?"
Yeah, I've seen a couple clips. Yes.
Okay. There's like it's 2 different like ideologies, and I'm fascinated by it because remastered follows. It's like the last. It's not like a dying breath or whatever. I don't know how you want to say it, but remastered is like the last Naughty Dog project that like kind of has a cartoonish art style to it because it's just remastering Last of Us 1. Starting with like Uncharted 4, and I mean honestly starting with like probably like Uncharted 3. I'd have to think about it, but like a lot of the characters, because they would hand animate a lot of the facial expressions. And I think they still do that to this day, by the way. They mocap and then the animators touch up with hand animations to enunciate things and emphasize things. But like Ellie's animations in remastered are very cartoonish in moments, and like, you know, she looks younger and Joel looks younger, and Joel's animations are more subdued because he's Joel. And like Tess, you know, Tess got the Spider-Man treatment where they made it look more like the actress who actually plays Tess. And so Tess looks a little bit different, and it's like I haven't played remastered since like 2019 probably. I replay it on probably like a yearly cadence. So if that's true, I haven't played it since like 2021. But like I want to go back and replay it and be able to kind of feel the differences, and obviously the gameplay is relatively the same, but like it's just a different experience. And so I'm like I've played every iteration of that game, and I've told myself I'm not going to buy it on Steam because that would be the 4th time to buy it, but I might just buy it on Steam. I don't know yet. And so, yeah, no, I'm a huge Naughty Dog stan, or Mark, to keep on the wrestling theme. I'm a huge Naughty Dog Mark. There's a couple of PlayStation. It's very funny because most of my history, or like all of my credits, I mean, Gotham Knights like was on PlayStation, but like Halo is an Xbox title through and through. And so when I talk to people, a lot of people associate me like with Xbox stuff. And I think I take up for Xbox a lot because I love the Kind of Funny community. Don't get me wrong. Absolutely love the Kind of Funny community. But there are times where we are a little harsh on Xbox in the comments on undeserved reasons. And I will take up for things like Halo Infinite and stuff like that. And, you know, maybe, am I biased? Maybe a little, okay? But like, it's a whole thing. And so a lot of people think that I lean towards Xbox, and I'm like, joke's on you guys. In my household, I'm the PlayStation kid. I had a PlayStation 3 and my brother had the 360. I had the PS4, my brother had the Xbox One. Like all of my favorite games of all time are either Nintendo games or, well, Halo Reach is up there. But there's like Infamous and Uncharted 2 and Last of Us, and, you know, I'm a Sucker Punch and a Naughty Dog fan, through and through. Those are my like 2 dream studios that my boss knows, and we've talked about it, that I'm like, if there's a job title that fits me that opens at one of those studios, I'm going for it, man. Sorry. I'm gonna try. So yeah, no, that was my tangent on your answer, which was a phenomenal answer.
Oh, thank you.
I love it. I love it. It was great.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of something else that would resonate like that, or like similar to your Zelda one.
And it's a loaded question because by the nature of the question, you wouldn't think of it. Like, this is one that I'd probably have to give you some lead time on so you can like introspectively look at yourself and be like, what have I played that I'm not giving like the respect to? And now you definitely can't see it. It's out of range. But on my shelf over there, I have a Flash and wrestling shelf that you can see next to the Stranger Things posters. And then next to that, above that, there's a My Hero Academia shelf. Below that, there's a gaming shelf. And on the gaming shelf, we have all the games I've ever worked on, but then next to that, there is Uncharted 4 and The Last of Us, and there's a Master Chief action figure, there's a Nathan Drake statue, and then right next to that now is 3 Zelda amiibos. The 2 are from Wind Waker, which I have still, to this day, have never finished Wind Waker. Like I said, there's no way I finished it as a kid. I'm not counting that. And then Wind Waker HD, I keep like meaning to go back. I have a Wii U in my closet. I keep meaning to go back and play it. And then much like the wrestling leakers that we've talked about, gaming leakers sometimes just say things. And there's a very prevalent video game leak that, oh, the Zelda remasters have been done for years and Nintendo's just sitting on them. And I'm telling you right now, I don't think that's true. Like, I don't think Nintendo has had a finished game that they're just sitting on for 4 years now since I've heard that rumor pop up. And, you know, they did it with Star Fox 2, so maybe they are doing that. But they did it with Star Fox 2 because it was really bad. And we all found that out with the SNES remaster or SNES Classic. So, yeah, no, that's... I totally don't blame you for not having it, for not having an answer for that one. Because I was thinking... I try to come... I can't remember what my last topic was for you. I try to come... Anytime that somebody mentions these things to me, and I remember doing it for your podcast, and I can't remember what it was. But anytime somebody mentions it, I'm like, I'm going to come in with it can't just be an easy one. I got to think of like a deep one, you know?
Yeah.
You got to think about yourself, where you've been in life.
Yeah, I like it. So we went the video game route. Is there one in a different medium that you could think for yourself? Whether it's maybe film, animation, books. I know you're talking about Dune a lot last time you were on the show.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Man, Dune.
Oh, we're here.
So you talk about it with Last of Us. I'm that way with Dune now.
Okay.
Where I have completely forgotten. I don't even know if I remember the end of Dune now, because I have completely forgotten about what happens in that book. And so when part 2 comes out, it's all going to be fresh. I'll be like, hey, Zendaya, I know the big thing. Have you read the series? You probably told me this last time. No. So I'm not going to say it.
Okay.
But I mentioned to somebody I was talking to, I was like, yeah, I got to the second book. And the second book is really weird because everybody tells you the second book is weird. You open the second book and the beginning is a passage like an intro from his son that just says, hey, I'm going to warn you. Like, I'm paraphrasing, obviously.
Sure.
But it's like, hey, I'm going to warn you. This book sucks. And he's like, this book is a collection of like things that he wrote for a magazine that he was trying, if I recall this correctly, I'm sorry if I'm incorrect. He was trying out a new way to tell the story or whatever. And it's like a collection of things for the magazine. And I can't remember if that's exactly correct, but something very specifically happens. And it's a very interesting way to do the book, because the intro says, this is the book where blank happens. You're not going to like this book, but you need to get through this book to get to the third book, which is his best. And so it's like such a funny thing where you're like, no, I'm going to like this book. No matter what people say, I'm going to like this book. And there's something about, hey, I don't feel bad saying this part. They make Paul a dick. Like, he's just an absolute dick in the second book, if I recall correctly. And there's something about making him just a dick, and they beat you over the head that's what it is. It's somebody interviewing Paul. And it's like Paul later in his life, I think, or something, and he's just like a dick about it. And they're just like, hey, this is the story of how this happens. And they shove it down your throat. This is going to happen. And then you're thinking maybe they beat it. And then you're like, whatever. I got like halfway through it. I'm sure that it follows through because the next book is titled in a very specific way. And so I don't remember what happens in Dune at all. But like for one that's always been around, that in the same way as Zelda. See, now you flipped the question on me, and now I didn't have something prepared, and now I see how hard it is. It's a really good point, because I can take a different route, kind of, which is an author that I've been. If you see my tweets at all, the author's name is Brandon Sanderson, and I had never heard of him. No, I take that back. I have heard of him in passing every once in a while. He finished The Wheel of Time for Robert Jordan, and he, is semi-prevalent in things. And then he drops, as I mentioned earlier, I'm all about showmanship. I'm all about theatrics. And last year he dropped a thing that it was like, it's time to come clean. And he like starts the thing and he's like, oh, I'm sorry. I need to come clean, blah, blah. And he's like, I wrote an entire book in secret during the pandemic. Oh. And then he's like, oh, this is cool, blah, blah, blah. And then he like talks about the logistics of how he had the extra time to write an entire book while he was still writing the other books that he was writing. And he was like, with all this free time, without conventions and all this stuff, like I was able to write a second book. And then he goes back to his desk and then he goes, but I actually wrote a second book too during the pandemic. And he's right. I've written 2 entire books. And so he talks about that. And then he goes, I actually wrote 4 books during the pandemic. and he was like, I wrote 4 books during the pandemic and a graphic novel during the pandemic.
Jesus.
And so he was like, what we're going to do, he goes, people have always asked us for like swag boxes and stuff. He's like, so what we're going to do is we're going to do this Year of Sanderson where, you can buy just the books and you get a book every 3 months. It's like a little book club. And they're all like, he calls them short stories because he's one of those authors that his regular, like his full-blown novels are like 1,000 pages. But his shorter books are like 400 pages, which are still sizable books.
Sure.
And so he's like, these are my regular size novels at 400 pages. So you can read them in, 3-4 months, whatever. But if you want the Year of Sanderson, you also get like a different themed box every other month of the year. And then every 3 months, every quarter, you get a book. You get a brand new book. And so I was like, heck yes, I'm totally in. So I bought a book and I read through the whole book. I ended up reading like 7 of his books last year. And he writes very fast. Like he puts out almost a book a year most of the time. And he does something that I love, where on his YouTube channel, every week he posts updates with the exact percentages of how far along he is on the next book.
Oh.
And like he's like writing it, and it's just educated guesses.
Sure.
You don't know exactly how long the book's going to be, but he's like, I'm Bing, and it'll say 5% done with this next book, and his next one's going to be another 1,000-pager, so he gets maybe 1% or 2 every week. And so it's like, okay, this is going to take a year to write, but you get to keep up with the progress through the whole way. So you're kind of invested. It's a really weird and cool way to do it. And so, like I said, I read like 7 of his books. They're all connected. He has a very Marvel, MCU, DC way to look at it, where they all in a shared universe. And then there's like Elseworld tales as well that don't take place in those universes. But you can tell because all of his magic systems follow very similar rules. It's like, oh, this isn't, of course, like a different planet in this same universe is going to take the same magic and refer to it in different ways and use it in different ways, but they don't know that the other way is even possible. They only know their thing. So like somebody will just mention like, oh, they have a really good memory. Like they can remember things for years or whatever. But in a different like book, they'll mention like, oh, if you are wearing like a band of metal, you can prescribe the memory to the band and recall it at any time. And so it's just, I'm going on another tangent, but that's a really good example of like, I've heard his name before and I'm like, oh, I'm not really a fantasy guy. I'm like a sci-fi guy. And his sci-fi book, Skyward, is what I started with. And I absolutely love, it's a trilogy. And then there's a trilogy of short stories, and then the finale is coming out this fall. And so that was the best way, you know yourself, your own tendencies, what's going to stick with you. That was the best way for me to do it because I read this sci-fi book, it hooked me, and then I found his tropes. Seems to have a negative connotation, but I'm going to say tropes. You find his tropes where there's always like the main character and then a buddy that they bounce things off of. And in the Mistborn trilogy, it's, this butler named Sazed who, ends up being an entire thing in and of itself. And he becomes his own character. And then in the Skyward series, it's the ship's AI named Mbot, and which the main character names it Murderbot. And it's like a whole thing. And so it's really funny. Like it's great. And then in the book that I'm reading right now, the Stormlight Archive, like his main pièce de résistance or whatever, It's like him and this fairy type character, and it's a very traditional way to give exposition to the reader, because you can just, the main character is confused and can ask the companion character, who is always more knowledgeable. He likes writing like sassy companion characters. The butler Sazed is real sassy. Mbot is just like the robot in Big Hero 6, who I can't think of the name right now.
Baymax.
Baymax, yeah. Mbot is just like Baymax. They have the exact same type of humor and everything. And Skyward is literally just Top Gun, but with aliens, where to the point of like the last thing is like the last act of Skyward is the last act of Top Gun, where they're at the graduating class. They have to go to the ships and like do the whole thing. And so anyway, it's phenomenal. That's a book series that I underrated personally, even though it wasn't necessarily prevalent in my life. But I'm just so glad that I have found him now, where he's kind of like in the peak of his career. I think it's the first time I've ever been able to do this, because you grow up reading books and you're like, hey, I really like this book. You're like, oh, this trilogy was written 10 years ago. You're like, oh, man, I really got into this book called Lord of the Rings. I wonder what's going to happen. And it's like, I guess Hunger Games was kind of like that, because every teenager, when I was a teenager, when that was coming out, loved Hunger Games. And so I read that, and that was, my God, if you lived in high school during the Hunger Game years, you'd walk in a classroom and there's like a million Suzanne Collins. Every desk has a different one. it's a whole thing. And then now we have the Harry Potter franchise that is very similar. That was like, I can't remember when those came out. I was definitely alive when they were coming out. Yes. I'm old enough now. I don't think it had started coming out when I was born yet. So of course, I was just too young.
I remember getting the first one from some relatives. I don't know if it was a birthday present or whatever, but I do remember like remembering when the releases did happen, like 4 or 5 and so on. So yeah, with you being a little younger than me, that you would have been during that time period.
Talk about twists that like I'm so glad that you haven't been spoiled on some, and then like the Dune one that I'm not going to spoil and stuff. Talk about a crazy twist that just permeates pop culture. Where like I didn't even read Harry Potter and I knew Snape kills Dumbledore. Like, that was just like a meme before memes were a thing.
Right.
Where it's like, I don't even know what this means, but I'm just repeating the joke now. like I'm just a 12-year-old kid or whatever who just is being told this thing that's supposedly ruining and then, oh my God, that's a great example. Harry Potter is kind of like the movie version of Legend of Zelda for me. 'Cause like, you know, as a parent, they like took us because they were like, oh, kids like Harry Potter. And like, we saw like the 3rd Harry Potter. My brother and I hadn't known anything about it. It was very odd. Whichever Harry Potter came out the same year as, you're not going to know this movie. There's no way, because I don't know the movie. It's a kid playing a guitar, and he's trying to find his parents, I think.
It's not Coco, right? No, that's his grandfather.
No, live action. It was during like the 4th Harry Potter movie or something.
Oh,
it was around the same time. It was a little British kid. I don't think he was British in the movie, but the actor was British. He's got a little round face, and I'm just gonna Google. We're gonna find this out together.
We got this.
Kid plays.
Isn't it great
guitar.
How those are the Google searches that work? You literally just type
needs parents. Oh, I guess you type in movie. This is like Guitar Center lessons. August Rush. I found it immediately.
Nope. Never would have got that.
August Rush. Do you know what Harry Potter movie came out in 2007? Let's find out.
That might have been
Order of the Phoenix.
Oh wow.
I will never forget.
The book?
Order of the Phoenix is 7? No, the film.
Oh, the film. Jeez, wow. Sorry, I'm just
good.
Like, I think that's later, but no, that's the 5th book, and okay.
Woo. So I didn't know like anything. I knew Harry Potter existed, obviously by the 5th film.
Sure.
It exists, but like my brother and I weren't bands. Like we didn't watch it or anything. And it was my grandmother. Now it's coming together. Pampa, Texas, city of like 10,000 people. We go to the movie theater, which has 3 screens. And we sit down, and it's one of those theaters where there is no incline. Everybody's just on the same plane.
Oh, yep.
And so we're just sitting there watching it. like Harry Potter doing his thing.
And this was
And
your
all of a
first
sudden
one?
yeah, all
Oh
of a sudden
no!
it splices in somehow. Like obviously this wasn't actual film. I don't know
Yeah.
how this happens in the digital age. It splices in with August Rush, and we're just like, well, this is weird. Like my brother and I don't know, and my grandmother's like an 80-year-old woman, so she doesn't know, and we're just watching August Rush, and we're like, I don't think this is this movie. And we're like watching this kid play guitar, and we're like, should we tell somebody? And then somebody finally complained. They shut down the movie, and they're like, we can't restart it, guys. Like, you're just gonna have to go home. And so we watched like an hour of Harry Potter.
Did they give
like
you
30
tickets
minutes
at
of
least?
August Rush. They probably
Okay,
gave us,
good.
Like, I was too young
Like,
to know the
what?
logistics of how they figured this out. But I'm sure they gave us something.
Where'd the magic go?
And so it was, now they're just playing guitar.
Yeah.
August Rush, I've heard is a great movie. You can go watch August Rush. I've heard it's a good one. So yeah, Harry Potter is of a movie version of that because I didn't know anything about it. That was my thing. And then like, I don't know, this girl that I had a crush on in like 2016 or 17 was like all about Harry Potter. And I was like, you know what? It's about time I watch these movies. I need to relate to this girl. And so I buy the Blu-ray pack of all of them,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
I just like fell in love with them. I was like, these are fantastic movies. And so like that's a great example of something that was just it's everywhere in pop culture. You're just like, I'm not watching this. In my head, growing up, it was in the same camp of Twilight. I was like,
Oh, okay.
I don't need to watch this. And then you finally watch it, and you're like, wow, these are pretty good.
Yeah, the
Somebody needs
Potters.
to talk about these movies.
The other side, no.
Yeah.
That was a mistake I made last year. It's like, you know what? I hear all these people talking about Twilight. Maybe I should watch Twilight. If you guys want to hear my reaction to Twilight, you can check it out in a past Wait, what are you talking about episode. I don't remember what episode it is, but go search that rant. Oh my God.
That sounds amazing. I might have to watch that. Oh my God.
Stupid.
Yeah, I've never seen them. I've seen the first one for sure. I feel
Don't,
like everybody's saw the first
don't waste your time. Just watch me yell at the screen for 30 minutes, and that'll be enough.
I've seen the CGI of the baby that everybody always makes fun of.
I thought
That's
that
what
was
I
real.
know.
It's not real. That's a fake. The movie was actually fine.
The movie was fine.
That CG was fine. The movie as a whole, maybe not.
Oh my gosh. I know the baseball scene's like famous. Like,
Yeah.
people, they just have a baseball game in the middle of this. It's great, man. I'm excited for it. I'm gonna go watch it now. So yeah, that's my those are my you've now gotten out of me a video game, a book, and a movie, and
Nice.
I was only prepared with the game. So that's
Hey.
good hosting skills. Right
Hey,
there.
I tried. I try. Yeah, I'll have to think more about mine, and I'll have to message you. Be like, oh, so it was this one, like we talked about with the matches. We'll think of 800 things.
Yep,
once
it's gonna
we're
happen,
done.
and you're gonna be like, damn.
Yeah, but that's a good one. I like that topic. Yeah, what's affected us that maybe we didn't realize.
Yep.
Alright.
And then you have like a whole other because I was excited for Breath of the Wild. I was down for it. I'm really bad about impulse buying things. Like I
Oh.
was like, I'm not getting a Switch. I'm not doing it. But I used to work at Best Buy. By then I was making commercials. I was like, I'm just gonna go by Best Buy and just see if they have a Switch.
Sure.
And if you recall, the year 2017, so long ago, it was kind of hard to find a Switch at first. And I feel very lucky, but in a weird way, where I got there and I like went to the manager because they didn't have any out. And I was like, went to the manager that I knew. I was like, hey, you have any of these? And he's like, oh, let me see. And like looks in the bag and he's like, we got one left. Do you want it? And I was like, yeah. So I bought it, and like, it's been one of those purchases that I love the Switch. I love the Switch games and everything. 90% of the year it sits in the dock,
Right,
untouched. It's a very Tears of the Kingdom is gonna get a ton of use out of it, and that's unless there's like a Mario game. That's the it for me.
Yep.
That's just how it goes. I have such a loyalty. This is probably part of the problem with Pokemon. I have such a loyalty to Pokemon that I'll buy the games. I still haven't played Scarlet Violet, but I
Oh.
bought it over Christmas. But like people like Tim Geddes have said that it'll simultaneously one of his biggest disappointments of last year and one of his favorite games of all time. So I'm like, I need to play this game. I've been kind of waiting to see if they do release a patch. So
Gotcha.
I don't think that they will, but I've gone long enough now to where I'm like, okay, by like mid-February or March, I'll probably have to play it. Nothing comes out in February that I really want to play, and then I think March, Jedi just got moved.
Yes.
There's the Horizon DLC that I may buy, but like other than that, I've got nothing until April. I'm a free man until April.
What are you talking about, Corey? WWE 2K23 drops on.
Oh my God. I've been seeing those entrance videos drop, and like some of them are cool, but I'm like, I don't know what you guys are doing. Like, I don't know if you saw the video that's been making the rounds on Twitter of Roman Reigns' spear. And like his lead up is really like his animation. This is cool. And then he's just doing a jog. He's just jogging over.
There is another one where he's not exhausted from the match. That looks better, but
I didn't
apparently
know
he
that.
was
Okay.
fatigued for more games, and
That makes more sense. I mean, I'm very excited for the AEW game just because it's something like different.
whenever it comes out.
Whenever it comes out. And also, I'm very excited for the time that we're going to have Cody Rhodes in an AEW game and a WWE game at the same time. It's going to be phenomenal.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah, definitely. What did I have? I had something. Oh, crap. Something popped in my head and it was automatically gone. You were talking about... Oh, Scarlet. Back to Scarlet and Violet.
Oh, yes, Pokemon.
If you want my opinion on it.
Okay.
I agree. Great game. I think the story is one of the strongest it's been in the Pokemon games. I personally didn't have issues. A couple pop-ins. Other than that, smooth sailing. So, there's my 2 cents.
I'm going to say this, and I'm going to sound real bad. Like, this is one of those things, okay, that I will forever be on the, not the defensive. If you remember that Halo Infinite, infamous 2020 demo that came out on the video, and people were like, the clouds are popping in. How are they making this game? The cloud, like, this looks awful. And it's like, okay, the lighting does kind of suck. But like, yeah, the clouds popping in, really not an issue.
Yeah.
And then this is where pitchforks and torches come out. I'm not a big FromSoft guy. I buy Elden Ring, and every time you hop on the horse, it's Pop-In City.
Sure.
You're running around, and there's just popping in, and you mention it. And because I'm not a dick, I just mention it, jovially and like talking to people. And every FromSoft fan that I've ever talked to is like, oh yeah, that part sucks. And everybody's like, yeah, it's real. It's not technically good at all. And then it just gets brushed under the rug. And then Pokemon comes out, and Pop-In is the big issue. But it's in the same year as Elden Ring.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is happening here? And it's literally just like the FromSoft has such a high thing that rightfully they have earned of such a high trust that people are like, okay, we'll totally overlook. And the Pokemon Company and Game Freak has also rightfully kind of deteriorated said trust, and they've just kind of debatably rested on their laurels over the years. And so something like Pop-In is like huge for people. That being said, your experience seems to be what most people say. Like the videos that I've seen seem to be the outliers, and the biggest thing, if I understand the situation correctly, is there seems to be a memory leak that affects the game really badly, where if you leave the game running continuously, the longer it goes, the worse the memory leak gets. And if you leave it continuously running for, say, 15 hours, then the game is like falling apart at the seams.
Sure.
But for most regular people that are going to boot it up, and I don't know how it works when it's running in the background for the Switch, but for most people who, will boot it up when they play it and then close it down when they're not playing it, or even switch out cartridges and then, whatever, most people have not had the huge issues of 5 frames a second and like giant buildings are popping in your face or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. So.
I know.
Yeah. When you got time, but then again, things just pile on.
Yeah, exactly. That was gonna be my other. That was gonna be my other topic, which was like, what things in the backlog do you feel really guilty about that you haven't started yet?
Oh,
so that was my other one that was in the background that I didn't choose.
Let me just. We'll bookmark that for the next one. That's a good one. Oh, boy. Well, everybody, This has been another episode of the Wait, What Are We Talking About podcast. My name is Brett, aka Enigma9011, and today we were joined once again by Corey, aka Corey Cudney. Corey, thank you so much for being on the show today, man. It was a blast.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I always
Absolutely.
really enjoy our discussions.
Yeah, definitely. And now we have a new topic for the next one, so
Exactly.
looking forward to that.
We got a thing for the next one.
For sure. If you guys want to catch the podcast live, you'd always go to twitch.tv/Enigma9011, usually every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Join the chat like Papa Griff and New York to SoCal did today and have some fun with the conversation. But if you can't catch it live, that's A-OK. Go over to YouTube and podcast services the very next week where it's broken out topic by topic and put as one big video and MP3 for your amusement on the following Friday. Last but not least, any way you can support the show, likes, shares, reviews, comments, yada, 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 yada. Whatever you can do. It may seem small, but it does help the show out in a large way. So please, if you could do that, we'd love you for it. And thanks for your time. Corey, once again, thank you, sir, for joining us today. It was a blast.
Of course.
Chat, viewers, listeners, thanks for hanging out with us today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And we will see you guys on the next one. Take care.